The great wokist civil war has been rumbling and brewing off in the middle distance now for quite some time, but things are about to come to a head on a rather unusual battlefield. A children's video game set in the Harry Potter universe by the name of Hogwarts Legacy, which has gotten a lot of rather fierce opinions to a boiling point, where one side is claiming that if you dare so much as look at, purchase, or review the game, you are a transphobe. And no doubt about it, even if you have no idea what the controversy is about. On the other hand, you've got a bunch of people who say that no, if you surrender to this narrative, you are anti-woman, you are taking away women's rights, you see. It's gotten rather interesting. I've talked about this whole conflict a little bit earlier, the whole TERF versus the trans lobby question, but what's more interesting to us immediately is one of the weapons currently being employed in this conflict is Space Marine 2. Ah yes, the 40k and Harry Potter crossover we've all wanted. We live in interesting times, that's for damn sure. So, one of the senior writers of Space Marine 2 put out a series of tweets that I wanted to talk about today, but Bounding Into Comic made a rather excellent little write-up of the whole thing, so I figured I'd just use them instead, because they are an excellent little website that I heartily do recommend. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 and Gotham Knights writer implies anyone who plays Hogwarts Legacy is transphobic. In fact, I might go one step beyond and say that she isn't just implying it, even. If you're going to insist on playing the wizard game, because, again, you must not say the words that cannot be spoken, at least the fabric of reality rip apart, I guess. Stop bending yourself into a pretzel trying to find a way to explain or justify doing so, and have the conviction to just say transphobia is not a deal breaker for me. Yeah. Like I said, the battle lines are starting to get rather strident on the conflict issues right here. So Ashley Cooper, she introduced herself to begin with as the lead writer on Space Marine 2, and then swiftly changed that to merely be a senior writer, coincidentally after a little bit of a backlash. That was explained away as simply a mistake on her part, but odd mistake to make. She's also got a rather lengthy history of some controversial tweets, shall we say. Sorry, cis-het white dudes, comics don't belong to you. Comics never belong to you. They belong to, us, you see, to other people who haven't been really buying them or anything since the comic industry currently is crashing, but minor capitalist details, because you see, capitalism too, well, it forces people to choose between various bad options, but she has to have a smartphone for work, so capitalism, oh, I guess. Along with the usual, all cops are bastards. Because that was the thing. Do you remember that, incidentally? The whole little period there where America was like, let's abolish the police, and then murders and rapes and violent crimes skyrocketed, and soon thereafter, perhaps this wasn't actually that good of an idea. See? I told you, just let them do it. They'll figure it out on their own pretty damn swiftly. Anywho, the article here also goes a bit more into depth with the whole J.K. Rowling question, because that's the crux of this here. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, is of the opinion that a woman is a human female. That is a controversial position in 2022. Like I said, interesting times. And she herself has been quite strident on this as well, and I love watching them fight, I really do. Because, here's the thing. What was the quote here? Yes. So, I've read all the arguments about femaleness not residing in the sex body, and the assertions that biological women don't have common experiences, and I find them too deeply misogynistic and regressive. Says J.K. Rowling. I adore how both sides in this conflict are using the exact same weapons, the exact same arguments, the exact same rhetoric, and the exact same intent, of course, is to shame their opposition into submission. The only problem is that neither side in this conflict has any shame whatsoever. Again, as detailed over here. The reason why accusing the normies and, well, people like me who had no idea what was going on like 7 or 8 or 10 or so years ago, accusing us of misogyny, fascism, blah 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 blah, was because we used to take those accusations very, very, very seriously. Getting called a racist or a misogynist or a Nazi, etc., those were serious accusations, not just of outright crimes in the civilized world, but also attacks upon our character. They were personal attacks, like, no, you don't get me to call me that, that's outrageous. You were very defensive immediately because of the seriousness of it. These days, it's not even a meme anymore. And that's a problem in and of itself, but it also means that neither side can do anything to convince the other, nor are they gaining really any ground with the majority. It's been rather interesting to see, for example, the Florida bill, right? The Don't Say Gay bill, as the progressives call it, or the Anti-Grooming bill, which is, to be fair, a more fitting name considering the actual purpose of the bill. There has been a great deal of pressure on various corporations to take a stance against this oppressive bill, which simply just says that teachers aren't allowed to talk about sex with children without telling their parents. Oh no. However, will civilization survive with such oppressive measures? It's a very good question indeed. Yet, it has garnered very little public support beyond the screaming echo chambers. There was also the famous report that I've seen going around the internet lately, though I haven't been able to confirm it, that Disney was supposed to stage a walkout a couple days ago, and only a single person, Uno, actually showed up to the walkout. If true, that is rather embarrassing. An interesting thing too is, the opposition, I suppose we'll just call ourselves in the broadest possible terminology, has begun to fight back against, well, these people on their own terms. Up here on the internet, we've been doing this for quite a while. Once it came out that this was the senior writer for Space Marine 2, I was immediately very, very skeptical. Not only was the trailer somewhat underwhelming to me, but the fact that they'd hired a senior writer who was very openly and actively political, that's a warning sign, because this group of people tend to not be able to separate their politics and their work. It is an almost entirely lost art to separate the art from the artist, and a lot of the reason for that is because so many of the modern day artists refuse to separate themselves from their politics. Now, I've been a great proponent of trying to do that, the separation, for a very long time. Like, I've watched Jim Sterling videos, for example, I still do occasionally, despite, in my opinion, him sliding further and further into a very interesting hole of his own making, but such is life. I can still value a lot of his critique, for example. But with a senior writer like this, the odds of them not bringing their politics into a setting like 40k, which is currently a rather fierce battleground of opinions on this matter, unlikely. Now, if she does manage, fantastic. She is one of those few people who is able to separate the private life from the public life, the work life. If so, applause, absolutely. And she is just one writer of a team. That might also reduce the influence quite significantly. Who knows? Space Marine 2 might be great. I just don't really dare to hope about it, but anywho, returning to the point, what is so very interesting is, our side has begun to adopt some of the tactics of their side, the rather extremist left, not to be mistaken with the more regular left, which is, rather than make the argument, rather than making the moral argument, presenting the case and then letting the masses judge, we are beginning to push corporations directly via things like legislation. The Florida legislation is an example of our side going, you know what, we're not going to try and have this discussion with you. We're not going to try and hash this out. We're not going to try and make a compromise. We are in power, so we are simply going to enforce our will upon you like you have enforced your will upon us. And if you don't like it, well, maybe you should have thought about that before you fired the first half a dozen shots, shouldn't you? And again, personally, I'm happy to admit I've become a little bit radicalized on this as well. At this point, I am entirely fine with the government going in and saying, no, Teachers shall teach what we tell them to teach, and they shall not introduce their own political ideologies or philosophies, especially not sexual ones, to children, especially not without parents' consent and informed understanding of what is being taught. I have no problems with that whatsoever. And it is beautiful to see, because they are weakening themselves a great deal with this, particularly also as a lot of people assumed that the more transgender-friendly lobby would quite quickly overcome the TERFs, and indeed, the trans-exclusionary feminists, in case you were unaware. And it seemed like that to begin with as well, as the TERFs were ceding a lot of ground, but as they began moving further back towards the centre, ironically enough, championing for freedom of speech, etc., well, a lot of the normies who have slowly but surely been waking up more and more have started to see this extremely radical discourse and gone, hold on, I'm not a transphobe because I want to play a children's video game. Playing Harry Potter doesn't mean that I hate trans people. We've finally arrived at that woke breaking point where even the normal people are looking at it and going, hold on there, this doesn't make sense. And we've had multiple of these previously as well, though this one is potentially a little bit special. It is the next step up, because we're no longer talking about just a franchise or a fan favorite or something a little bit out there, something a little bit niche. We are talking about Harry Potter, which I think is actually the biggest novel series ever at this point. I think it might actually be one of the highest selling things ever when it comes to novels, not to mention all of the video games, all of the movies, the massive movie series, and they're in what now, the third book of that half-assed mystical monsters thing, which they made out of like a 12-page leaflet. The thirst for the Harry Potter universe is real and does not seem to be subsiding anytime soon. And if you're going to take all of the people who like Harry Potter and label them all transphobes, well, transphobia might very soon become the majority opinion at that point. Ironically, not due to any of our efforts, but rather your own classifications. It's an interesting situation to be sure, isn't it? Now, the ideal situation is, and here's the thing too, I don't like Hogwarts Legacy for completely different reasons. They decided to cancel one of their main directors for what? Well, you see, he committed a crime. An inexcusable crime, a violation of the sanctity of our mother church. He infringed upon the holiest of the holy. He dared to have a YouTube channel back in the day where he spoke ill of SJWism. I don't understand why we just didn't hang the man outright, honestly. And then he decided to step back from his role as a director due to health and family reasons. Alright, yes, that excuse that every single career politician throughout human history has used when they've found themselves in a bit of a controversy that they don't wish to deal with or can't deal with anymore. Now, to be fair, in his case, he had apparently been planning this for a while, and he had been thinking about it, but I call bullshit. The man was forced out, and I don't like any video game that forces people out for their opinions, regardless of what they might be, so long as they're able to keep their politics out of it at the very least. So, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Hogwarts Legacy is currently under siege from literally every single source at this point, and has drawn a truly tremendous quantity of drama to it. Maybe it'll turn out to be a good thing, maybe it'll increase sales numbers, and maybe the normal people who like Hogwarts Legacy just simply won't care. Either way, I don't think it'll be a benefit to, at the very least, these groups of people. In fact, I'm pretty sure it'll be a net negative. So, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about the wokeist civil war slowly but surely beginning to brew? And will Hogwarts be one of these first major battlegrounds? One of the first big clashes that will be viewable to the public, shall we say? Or has Hogwarts Legacy managed to get so much negativity and bad PR that it'll arrive, flop massively, get laughed at, and then disappear from the public conscience like that? Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.